Hello, I'm Ted Turner. I'm the Cloud Solutions Architect for Kentik. And today the topic is what's going on in the cloud. Justin alluded to, we're bringing some capability to Google that we've done with AWS and Azure. So we're enhancing the product, bringing things along. I'm talking a little bit about what customers are asking for. So today I'm focused on the cloud portion of all of this, but there are some questions that have been asked that as I'm going into the cloud, a lot of this will be a rinse and repeat of what's available for the SD-WAN for some of the service provider. A lot of our service provider customers are looking at providing this capability that we have for shared customers. So is your cloud provider executing network maintenance? I can guarantee you they are. Oftentimes they'll tell you. But do you get that notification? Do you get that email? As a network engineer, you're probably not the owner of that cloud account. You're not the owner of that subscription. So you're oftentimes not going to get these notifications. Someone else did. Do they share them with you? It might go into the bit bucket. It might go into a spam folder. There's a lot of things that happen, but the network engineer is not oftentimes made aware of this. So if there's a maintenance going on, is there going to be impact? Sometimes, yes. Most of the time, you're going to have a sales team connecting into the cloud, talking to a particular application, calling on Kubernetes, running in, say, Azure Kubernetes service. And it's going to work most of the time. But once in a while, that routing in the cloud changes. But that's similar to that SD-WAN. Sometimes the routing changes, and when the routing changes, what type of notifications can you fire off? How do you know what's going on? And oftentimes those routing changes are indicators of what's going on, that something is happening, and that's where a network engineer, cloud teams, application teams would like to know more of what's going on. So we built a demo. So one of our customers, they were getting an hour outage every month for 3 months in a row, pulling their hair out. Got on the phone, talked to the database team in the cloud provider. They had serverless, they had Kubernetes. It was just renting services in the cloud. And once a month, their sales team just got sidelined. And so what did we do? We went and we looked in, and we could see that the routing path changed in the cloud. That's interesting, because when that routing path changed, instead of taking that routing path that we're expecting the rest of the month, it was sending everything through to the public internet. Now, when it was routed out to the public internet, that's not a permitted pathway. Therefore, they're safe because their internal traffic talking to that backend database is not going someplace where they don't want it to. Exfiltration of data is not happening. But the sales team is also not getting anything done. The sales team is calling on the phone, those angry user phone calls, those are coming in. So how do we make this available? So we can see, based on flow, who's talking to who. We go get that additional metadata. So that correlation, that ability to help understand not just who's talking to who, but we'll add in the DNS, we'll add in the host names, we'll add in that database name. These are all things that we can pull in with telemetry. Now we can do the same similar in the real world with DNS, pulling information out of your various providers, tying all of that together. But in this cloud context, we're able to pull that in. And here, we're able to see that things are changing, going through an ENI, a transit gateway, and a network address translation. But these become the interesting components. This is what caused the outage. So those services that you're renting in the cloud change the pathway. You're calling the database engineers from your cloud provider, hey, there's nothing wrong with the database. You're calling the Cube team for the cloud provider, hey, there's nothing wrong with Kubernetes. You're calling the serverless, hey, there's nothing wrong with function apps. So on month number 3, they said, hey, get the networking team, get the cloud provider networking team on the call. I go, yeah, we're doing a network maintenance. Of course, didn't you get the notification? And you shouldn't see any impact. Well, sales team is impacted. Cube and function apps can't talk to the database. So we know what the impact is. We know what that feels like. If we have synthetics, that was one of the suggestions that we made to the customer, set up synthetics, do that transaction test, and know where things are getting stuck. Understand what that pathway is from the campus, from the data center, in to the cloud provider, eliminating cause for concern everywhere else in the path, and then identify which one of those pathways, as you're talking through that cube or that Lambda, do you have that access to that backend database. So we actually have this demo environment I wanted to call out. So if you sign up for Kentik, go to kentik.com, sign up. You can actually see this. There's that demo environment over there. And we have this data, ginned up data, that we can validate and show this type of stuff off. So if I move into the demo real quick, here we can see traffic going from our internal services across to those public IPs. As I'm looking at this, I can see that there is a service that my sales team is using, and we're making a connection to other services. And I can see the source accounts and my traffic profiles, and I can show that the traffic is changing different paths. Those are the interesting pieces. That at large is what we're trying to make available. The interesting piece is as we go through, we start to look at the query. I've got this focused on Amazon Web Services. Here are some of the dimensions I have available. So these are things that we build into the product, making available in the database. So this is a little bit of what Lexi was asking, hey, do we make it simple? So other competitors that syslog ingest, you have to know how to go build all of those queries. We don't want people to have to know how to build the SD-WAN, the cloud, the router, the load balancer, all these different types of queries. We show this information off pretty quickly and make it available. Here's some of the IP and BGP routing. Here's the cloud details. Almost everything here on this portion, that orange and the blue, are metadata. This is information about that flow that we went to the cloud provider and we picked up that information and brought it back, dumped it into our database. So now we've got a source and dest IP, but we also know we have columns of additional metadata for that flow at that point in time. That's the interesting part. That's the information that you as a network engineer need, because over time, that 1 hour outage for the sales team is interesting. What changed? And so we can see that data, or the gateway change, because it's recorded along with those IP flows. This is the benefit of having that metadata.
It's Jan here for a question. On
Yes.
that cloud metadata, is the time range used for that specific IP and DNS name integrated in the details too? Because IPs can be assigned to different services in the cloud and they are quite dynamic. So if you're looking back in a time machine, as Phil showed, could be a complete different service 2 weeks ago.
You got it. And so as we see those flow records, as they appear, we include that epoch timestamp so we know what time something occurred at time of ingest. We do two pieces. We do the Kentik time of ingest, and then we have the provider time of ingest. We maintain both of those because sometimes there can be a discrepancy. Things show up late. Sometimes you want to go look at things as the provider is presenting that timestamp, and sometimes you want to look at it as you're collecting it. Sometimes that'll correlate with DNS or some other metadata. But we'll put both of those in there. And as I'm showing here, we can go look back at different time frames and understand for the time frame those IPs that were interesting. And then we gather that metadata at time of ingest. So as those ephemeral services are spinning up and down, Lambdas, function apps, et cetera, they're taking on different IP addresses, different names that might be a different service release or an application release. We will pick up tags. If I edit dimension, the instance tags that your application teams, that your cloud team add We're providing that additional context, dropping it into the database. As we see those IPs come through, we'll go gather them immediately. Now, there's a slight delay from your cloud provider. Some of them are faster, some of them are slower. But then we cache it and we have it available. And then once every 15 minutes, we're going to go through an update and make sure that for that ephemerality, that we're keeping up with what those application deployments look like. Is that a good answer, Peter?
Yeah, it does.
So part of the other neat part, trying to make things easier, we have the ability to go share. So anything that we're looking at within Kentik, sometimes we need to share it with a provider. You're talking about the SD-WAN, you've got provider 1, you've got provider 2, provider 1 is having a bad day, your SD-WAN moved the traffic over. We have the ability to share this information with that provider. But another thing that we can do is we can add, Phil was just showing off the observation deck, some of these standard views, we can start to build them for teams within our environment. So if you have an application team, if you have an operations team, if you have a SOC or a NOC, you can go start to build dashboards. You can build this observability. We also have this dashboard here, so we can add it to a dashboard and then allow different teams to see the same underlying data. Now we've started going down that simplicity path. People don't need to know our Kentik product. Teams don't need to know our Kentik product. You can take someone who understands what problems you're trying to solve. You're trying to solve the SD-WAN problem. You're trying to solve the cloud problem. Build some of those standardized dashboards, make them available for some of your other teams. The other part here is the alert policy. So we're talking about notifications and webhooks. We can send that off to an email, a Slack channel, ServiceNow, a webhook, generate something, tie it into your own system. So we now have the ability to take some of these standardized dashboards, something that we built for an application team, something that we built for the finance team or the sales team. They can see their dashboards, and then from those dashboards, we can then further take that and send off notifications. One of my favorite things is the state of the internet. That capability to help understand what is going on in the rest of the world and then compare and contrast my view of the world with what everybody else in the world is seeing. And a lot of our customers will start with this state of the internet, the state of these applications, and then go build similar tests for their campus, for their data center, and understand what their specific experience looks like, and then be able to compare and contrast, hey, we are having a problem today in a particular geographic region. We're having a problem today from a particular data center, but it's not something that the rest of the world will see. Or conversely, hey, that particular service is having a bad day. No matter what site I'm going to go to that I manage, I'm going to be having a problem.
Hey, this is Tyler. I've got a quick question. How granular is RBAC? And can you sort of resell or purchase it as a multi-tenant solution, right? So if I'm a service provider and I've got multiple customers and I want to be able to give each of them their own view into things, can I do that, or is that not feasible?
I like you guys. I love this entire team. Avi and team, before I even got here, we have Kentik, my Kentik portal, so that as a service provider, you can share information with your customers. If you have some mechanism of tagging that information, you will share a dashboard, a set of dashboards for that specific customer. So there's a customer ID oftentimes in your provider world. You can help tie those things together and then share those. There's also a resale model. A number of providers want to do both sides of this, a little bit of what they can share with the back end from a provider point of view, scope to a customer. And then some of those customers want to be able to set up those synthetic tests and test the applications that are interesting to them. So there is not only that provider view on the back end, but there's a resale model. And there's a revenue stream for the provider. You're bringing us in for your customer, but the answer is all three of us, the provider, Kentik, and the customer, all want to answer questions. That unbounded capability is what we're looking for. And the more often we're able to tie together those data sources, the better off we all are. We're able to pinpoint those problems.
Does this cater equally well to ISPs as MSPs?
Yes, we are talking to ISPs, internet backbone providers, content delivery networks expanding into different areas. I need to start wrapping up here pretty quick, but Justin's going to talk about Kubernetes and being able to look at containerized packages. With that, we can get into the kernel, into the Linux kernel. Phil was talking about eBPF, so the Berkeley packet filter, the extension of that. Anywhere that we can get in with eBPF, we're able to extract that data, tie it together with your cloud provider, with your ISP, your backbone provider, your local WAN, LAN, SD-WAN that you run and love and own, and all of your load balancers, and anything that you can run on, say, VMware or KVM inside your world, we can tie all those things together. The neat thing is we can see IP, source and dest IPs all along the way. We can see those QoS markings. Whatever that provider can tie together, we might be in Kubernetes world with that command line showing you what you're running, which database you're talking to, what those IPs are talking to within Kube and that container, and then the switch, router, firewall, cloud provider as that call is being made into the cloud. All of those things match along the way, typically based on IP. Some of it might be underlay, some of it might be overlay, but we have the ability to see both of those.
So with regard to the state of the internet, on the previous screen, I was doing a custom setup to query a particular thing. So suppose some internet service is related to my internal custom monitoring. Can I show that service or those related internet services on the same dashboard so I can see that, yeah, there's a problem in my custom monitoring, but it's probably related to the fact that this internet service is globally seeing this problem?
Yeah, we can push that into observation deck. There's some dashboards. We use these as a lot of models to then go build those customized dashboards to show. We do a little bit on the public clouds, showing what that latency looks like from region to region within the cloud. But oftentimes that's the problem. Knowing that there's a maintenance going on in one particular region and latency, packet loss, jitter are occurring within that region. And if you can share that with your application team, they can shift that traffic to another more stable region if you can identify what those stable regions are. So I'm going to wrap here. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'm Ted Turner, Cloud Solutions Architect at Kentik. We went into a couple scenarios on the cloud version, but hopefully you saw that the questions we can answer in the cloud, seeing what those gateways are and that those gateways are changing, are interesting across the board because it's simply networking underneath.